Alrighty. Shalom, guys. How's it going? I want to keep the intro nice and short this week. Um, Today we have a teaching on entering into his rest. Entering into God's rest, aka active rest. And so without further ado, let's jump right into the teaching.
Okay, let me. I'll take a stab at this, and then if we need to try to reincarnate the question afterwards, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
So Hebrews, right, where it says we're perfect in being perfected,
Hebrews
right?
10.
Hebrews 10. We got our local
10:14.
10:14. Oh, there you go. So
Hey, nice.
yeah, coming in sniping it. Yeah. So we're perfect in being perfected, and it's like, well, that seems a little. One word picture I like for this is Michelangelo, I believe. I hope I don't butcher this, but when asked about like carving the statue of David out of stone, they're like, how do you do this? And he's like, well, I'm not carving David. I'm just removing everything that isn't David, right? So I'm not trying to create David out of the stone. I'm removing all the stone that isn't David, and I think that's a neat, like that same reversal that he did there is kind of the same reversal of what it means. So when we're talking about us growing and becoming something better in Christ as we continue our life forward in Christ, it's not so much that we're the understanding to have about that needs to be reversed. It's not so much that like Christ has to be formed in us. Paul uses that language, but I think that picture of essentially like everything about who we are of Christ in us is already there, and our journey into perfection is by removing all the lies of the flesh. Anywhere our identity might be that isn't based on Christ being removed. So that's what our journey of maturing in Christ looks like. It's removing all the flesh to reveal in our own conscience and heart and faith that like any area that we might touch and believe about ourselves, the thing we're touching is Christ rather than flesh. And so it's more of like removing of the junk and the dross rather than forming something new as we go on. So Paul gives us an admonition in Hebrews. He's like, strive, so work really hard, make it your priority effort to enter into his rest. And that seems like a complete oxymoron, right? Like strive really hard to enter into rest. And because that same rest, that's what the Israelites in Exodus failed to enter into, right? They were not able to enter into God's rest by faith because they didn't have faith. And so that place of rest, that place where we cease the doing, that's what the Sabbath is where we're no longer the doers. And we can only enter that by faith. We can only the only way we can truly enter into a place and a reality where we know we're not the doer is by faith in the sovereignty of God. And so we enter into the rest of God by entering into the sovereignty of God, by knowing that everything he does is him doing it. And so there is no meaning or significance in a carnal sense that we're used to the things that I do. So now it doesn't matter whether I do anything. If I do something or I don't do something, it doesn't matter. But then on the other side of rest, there's something I've just kind of called active rest, where you're doing something, but you're doing it from a place of rest. And so here's an example. It's a simple example. I live in an RV. We have these RV refrigerators that can use propane instead of just electricity to keep the refrigerator cool. And it started to get hot. It was getting into the summertime back in Oklahoma, and my refrigerator stopped working. And so I'm like, well, God, like, this is your problem, right? Like, I'm going to cast my care upon you. This is your problem. This is your fridge. And, you need to fix your fridge. So, like, get off your duff and fix your fridge, And so I think I want to say it was like 2 months that the fridge didn't work. So I mean, I ate out a lot and stuff like that, right? So my fridge was inoperable, so I wasn't able to have milk or cold drinks or ice or whatever. But so for 2 months, I didn't try to fix this fridge. I didn't try to debug it. I just was like, God, this is your problem, not my problem. Like you got to fix this. Now I think we can agree that after I made that prayer, if the next day, the next week, the next month, somebody came knocking on my door and said, hey, just want to let you know, like I just pulled into, a site a few down from you and I just felt this urge to come over and let you know that, I work and repair RV refrigerators. Do you happen to have an issue with your RV refrigerator? I think we can all agree that would be God coming to fix my fridge, right? Now, what ended up happening in my particular situation is after a couple months of like, this is God's problem and he's going to fix it when he fixes it. Then one morning I woke up and suddenly I felt emboldened to work on it. And I also had an inspiration of what the issue was, that it might just be the control board, right? So I got up and I looked up the control board, and apparently you can just buy them for that model for like $100. And so I bought it and it came in and I was able to swap out the board and the fridge started working. Now, I would say that's an example of active rest, because to me, even though I fixed the fridge, like in a moment by moment play of the story,
right.
like it was there was no miraculous guy knocking on the door. It was me looking it up, buying the parts, spending my money, putting it in, replacing it. But what I know about that is it was 100% God who did it, because I know I'm one with God. So I know that even though I was the one doing it, it was the Father doing it. And so in that place of rest, in that place of, even though I did something, I wasn't doing it. That's active rest. And I was able to fully glorify God and go, God, this is 100% your doing to fix my fridge. That I felt it was just as much, obviously, God fixing my fridge as it would have been if the guy knocked on my door and said, hey, can I fix your fridge for free, right? And so I would say that takes more faith to be in that place, to know that even in the trivial things that you do, that it is 100% the Father doing it. And that's what active rest looks like, is that, and that's what it looks like for the glory of God, for the meaning of what you're doing to be for the glory of God. That I know that even though I'm doing it, it's God getting the glory out of it. But the first step in that we've got to do is what Paul said. We've got to strive to enter into his rest. And so we've got to stop the doing. We've got to stop believing in our doing. We've got to know that everything we do is by his authorship. And the other aspect of that is contentment. Contentment is the other major component to entering into his rest, is that because there's going to be very real circumstances that we encounter in life that we're going to want to not be happy with, or that we're going to want to wrestle against or try to do something to fix. And contentment is the main thing, our main tool to entering into his rest. And it can certainly, I promise you, it'll feel like striving to try to show up and content yourself with a situation. That can very much be the striving that Paul's speaking of. But that contentment, and that was in my story, right? I was content with my fridge being broken for 2 months, right? So I was definitely operating in contentment. I was in rest. And that allowed me, that it qualified me, if you want to put it that way, to then be able to operate in active rest, to where, like, I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it because this was God fixing my fridge for me. I wasn't doing it for myself because I didn't care. I was in contentment. And so contentment is the main ingredient of entering into his rest. And I will kind of loop that back into the fear part. The main way you overcome fear is contentment. Contentment is the way to take the power that you're attributing to something and to attribute it to God. So, for example, when I first got a motorcycle several years back, as you can appreciate, I'm learning to ride on this thing, and you're going 45, 55, 65 mile an hour down a road, and a fear started to try to seize upon me of all the ways that I was going to die horrible deaths riding this thing at such speeds. And so, using that as the example, the way I would overcome that fear is not, oh, God would never do that to me, God would never allow that to happen. Or maybe I might try to overcome that with prayer, like, please, God, don't let that happen to me. All of that is not contentment. All of that is to serve my lust, to try to ensure and secure life for myself. But the proper answer to that is contentment. And what that looks like is, okay, fear, right? Because when a fear comes, it's painting a picture in your mind. So in this case, it's painting a picture in my mind of my tire blowing out and I flip and my brains splatter all over the pavement. Right? So I just sit back and I say, okay, fear, give me your best shot. Paint your worst picture for this scenario. What does that look like? And then I let the imagination run wild. I'm like, okay, is that your best shot? That's the worst thing that's being trying to be presented to me right now. Okay, well, that scenario, that will only happen if it's the will of my Father. And if it's the will of my Father, who am I to be upset about that? If my Father, if that's what he wants for my story to be, who am I to be upset about that? There's no point in me being upset about that. Like, if that's what God's story for me is, so be it. And if it's not God's will for me, it will never happen. It will never happen if that's not the will of God for me. If it is the will of God for me, he's going to get my brain splattered on that pavement, whether I'm riding this motorcycle or not. He's going to get my brain splattered on that pavement, whether I'm trying to strap myself to my couch and never leave the house. It's going to happen, right? So,
right.
Whether I continue riding the motorcycle or try to be as safe as possible, the will of God's going to happen, and there's nothing I can do to alter that. And so that's what contentment looks like, and that's how you overcome fear. And that's kind of like the faith that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego demonstrated, where it's, he's about to throw them in the furnace, and they're like, hey, just so you know, God can deliver us from this furnace, but even if he doesn't, he's still God, right? So